All right, people, welcome back to another podcast that doesn't have a name yet. Maybe by the end of this podcast, we'll figure out what that is. But as we are here on Goloremi Languages, we like to invite cool, interesting, amazing people to talk about what they're doing, not just in the world of language learning, but also in their lives. And today we have Jo Franco, who's going to explain more about herself because she's a multifaceted human being. So, Jo, what's up?
So much is happening, and I'm stoked to talk to you because I feel like we have overlaps with how we're everywhere. And, when you learn languages, that is a skill set that can be transferable to so many different things. So for me, my backstory, I'm Brazilian, so sou brasileira, and I joked, you were like, what is your, what do you go by? And I'm like, my name is Joe, but actually it's Joana Rogério Pereira Franco. It's like the classic Brazilian situation where we have 100 names. But when I was 5 years old, we moved to the States, and so without knowing any English, without knowing any really, like, American culture, we had to absorb all of it, and it's really fascinating. I was speaking to Steve Kaufman about this, I know you had a chat with him, that he moved from Sweden, I believe, to Canada when he was 5, and he doesn't remember anything of that, like, language acquisition.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I remember everything. Like, I remember
Okay.
not knowing how to say, "Where's the bathroom?" So I peed my pants tragically in the 1st grade, right? Or, like, I remember trying to cheat off of people's spelling tests because I didn't know the
Mm.
language. So I definitely have a very traumatic learning of English story, but it actually ended up shaping me in the best way possible because by the time I was 6 years old, I was already comfortable with being uncomfortable, and any language learner knows that that's, like, the number 1 ingredient. So by the time I was in middle school, I became kind of obsessed with turning what was once a weakness into a superpower, and I started learning
Mhm.
French. Everyone was like, "Oh, take Spanish, it's gonna be easy." And I'm like, "No, screw that, like, why am I gonna miss the opportunity
Yeah.
to learn something different?" So I started studying French. I was kind of a badass, though. I would show up to school with, like, short skirts, get yelled at, but loved the language and would stare into the pictures and the textbooks being like, "Man, one day maybe I can go there." But we were undocumented, so that's the other twist in my story. For 12 years,
Wow.
we couldn't leave. So the only way I could travel, with quotation marks, was through language and studying language, because that would unlock these different potential, futures for me, but I couldn't actually go anywhere. By the time high school rolled around, the school system that we came for was really great. So they had Italian as well, and I know that that's, like, a huge privilege, and I don't wanna discount,
So
like, language is a privilege, right? And it depends where you are and what schools you have access to and all those things, but I had to write a letter to the principal to be like, "Hey, can I take Italian and French?" Because I grew up bilingual.
mm,
So I was the only kid in the school system who was allowed to, and I loved
right.
both of them. But it was like high school shit, like, you don't really learn how to speak the language,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, you get your brain ready to learn. Then I graduated, went to college, studied international business and sociology, thought I was gonna be a badass minority CEO, like, woman in the NBC Universals of the world. I did 7 internships, loved a lot of them, but
Wow.
couldn't ever find one that gave me the opportunity to speak my languages. So that was the issue. Because I was like, "Damn, sure, I can do a marketing job, but, like, where is the language ability there? I could do new business and pitch new business, and that's really fun for me, but, like, what about the, global elements? Social media marketing, cool, but we're only talking to one audience, which is the English-speaking audience." So none of it seemed to, like, be a good fit for me. And that was a big lesson that I learned, that if you cannot find the job that's perfect for you, you build it. And so that's kinda how the YouTube journey started, which was in 2012. I had a channel with a college buddy of mine called Damon and Joe, and the very beginnings of that, it was a travel channel. And when we started that, I still didn't even have my American passport. I had just gotten my green card when I got to college,
Mm.
and that was a big moment because I met this, white guy from the Midwest who grew up going to Costa Rica and to Mexico with his family, and I'm like, "Dude, I haven't left Connecticut until I went to New York, and maybe I would go to Florida to visit family, and now I'm good friends with this guy who just travels on the weekend." So I had to shift so much of my mentality of, like, travel should be accessible. Travel doesn't need to be this frivolous thing for luxury people. Like, we were broke and we would find these cheap bus tickets and just go. And because I thought I would never get the opportunity to do anything like that again, I started documenting all of it, whether it was through my journals or we started making videos. Partially because videos were free to make and we were broke. So it's like, what are you going to do when you're in a new city and you don't have money? You're going to create stories. So that was
Yeah.
how our channel started, and of course, naturally, no one gave a shit. No one watched it for 3 years. No one cared, and, like, I
Wow,
used
3 years.
3
That's a grind.
Yeah, Will, 3 years, man. I baked cookies at a study abroad fair and said, "If you subscribe to the channel, I'll give you a cookie," like, literally
Hustle.
grinding. Because we
Yeah.
believed in the mission, and the mission was simple. It was like, let's make the young travel show for people just like us who don't have the money, but have the desire and the curiosity and, the good attitude to just like go to these places and learn these languages and connect. So that's how it started. And that lasted 7 years, 8 years. We had over 1 million subscribers, which is insane because I will never forget like baking those cookies. And we were able to build what we never could find. And, on that channel, we were making videos in French and Portuguese and English 3 times a week. It was a 3 time a week channel. And that in itself was wild because you're like not only speaking the language, but you're editing yourself and posting and then seeing comments in that language. So part of the way that I've learned my languages has been through using the internet as a resource. And that's how I reconnected with my Brazilian culture. It's like all of these Brazilians suddenly knew who I was and they were helping me. Some people, left hate comments like, this girl doesn't speak Portuguese. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm a
Classic.
filter. But eventually, that's how
Yeah.
my Portuguese became fluent again. Because when you grow up having to survive in a language, you naturally like abandon something else to make space. So all of this kind of happened around 2018. I turned 27 or 28, and I was like, okay, damn, I'm in a different chapter in my life. What's next? Because when you start making young travel videos, you realize that that's not going to last forever. But I hadn't studied any languages. And that was a huge piece of me that I had abandoned because we were just on this moving train going a million miles per hour,
Yeah.
pumping out content. And so I sacrificed a lot of the things that I wanted to do during those years to achieve what we achieved, and I'm grateful. But by the time I hit 27, 28, I was like, "Okay, we've done what we needed to do here. Like this mission, I'm going to deem this as accomplished. And now what's next?" And what was next for me was I auditioned for a Netflix show and booked a job as a host of a Netflix show called The World's Most Amazing Vacation Rentals, which opened this super interesting door to TV hosting.
Mhm.
And then we did 2 seasons, so I had 2 new co-hosts and learning the craft of, like, carrying a TV show, which was really cool. And we did that from 2020 until 2021. So in the middle of the pandemic, I was shooting a global travel show. Wild.
Wow.
And I got off the internet. And
Yeah.
and then when the show came out last year, it was just riding the wave of the press and me asking myself, "What do I really wanna do?" And this is when I started learning languages again. So that's when I
Okay.
was like, "Damn, I've always said I wanna learn Egyptian Arabic." Like, "Yalla bina, let's go." And I started taking lessons every day and started getting great at it and opening doors, as you know. And then I'm like, "Damn, what about Greek?" I love Greek so much, and then I started studying Greek again. So, that's kind of where I'm at now. It's like back on the internet, excited to make these pieces of content that unite the world, and like you, I do a lot of things.
Yeah, that is a fascinating story. I'm actually much better or much happier that I, didn't dig to try and find. I'm sure you've talked about this stuff on videos and stuff like that, when you're connecting with the fans and stuff like that. But to hear it straight from you is quite interesting. So I've got a few questions too, because I don't even know where to take this, but I'm gonna keep us somewhat centered and focused. I too, by the way, I don't speak Egyptian Arabic. Love Egyptian Arabic. Been to Egypt 3 times. Spent an extended amount of time there. I love Cairo. Been to Alexandria. Love it there. But for all the languages that you have and for all the things that you're doing, what, by the way, I saw you on your story on Instagram just the other day, walking and rocking Pimsleur, uh, German, I think. But for the stuff that's next, what are these languages? What are your kind of goals for the languages that you are dabbling in, and what are they? Just give us a better understanding of what you speak, what you've studied, kind of in that realm.
Sweet, yeah, so the language checklist. So, Brazilian Portuguese,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, and I had a whole journey there because of the forgetting and then remembering. Then English became my main English. Wow. English became my main English, you know how it is. English then became my main language, then French. I lived in Paris for a few months, not a lot, but then because we created the audience, I had a whole French side and French friends. Then Italian. Then my first job in the YouTube world was actually learning Spanish. So I eventually had to learn Spanish in Mexico, Costa Rica, and Ecuador. Then it became Egyptian Arabic. My best friend is Egyptian, so I was always around her and her family. I went to Egypt and realized like, damn, this person is like a family member, so I should probably learn this language. Then Greek, which I love so much. Every time I get to go to Greece, I go, and I noticed that me learning Greek changes the experience in the country
Mm,
because people just invite me into their homes. Like I was just in Greek Easter in Thessaloniki
okay.
with a Greek mom who spoke no English. And it was just me and her kicking it for 4 hours, me, her, and Google Translate. And it was so amazing because it's one of those things like I needed to have somewhat of a base to survive that. And you just see your brain grasping everything and the human connections just evolve. And now I'm getting paid to learn languages, right? So my next job is with a language school where I have to learn German, and I'm going to Berlin at the end of the month. And so they were like, "Joe, you did your 21-day language challenge," which I can talk a little bit more about. But they were like, "We want you to do
Totally.
the same thing with German. We wanna see how much German you can learn in 20 days." And I'm like, "Damn, y'all are just, like, testing me right now." Like, now I've become, like, this, guinea pig, like a lab rat for languages, and I love it.
Yeah.
I really do.
What can you explain what you're gonna do for the school? I mean, it's like, hey, we're gonna give you this crazy idea. Learn this language in 20 days or as much as you possibly can. And then what? Come over to Berlin and guess what? We don't speak English anymore. Like you're good luck with you. Or what's the plan?
Yeah, the plan is basically from now, what is June 4th? They told me this 2 days ago, by the way. So they were like, "Okay,
Mm,
Joe, our vision is that you're studying every single day. And then by the time you get to Berlin, you will test what you've learned. Like, can you order a coffee
mm.
and can you have a basic conversation?" And I'm like, "Damn, like this is new." Because German is not a language that I've dabbled in before, right? So it's like, you know this, every language you learn, it's like starting over again. And it's exciting, but it's also daunting. And I'm like, these sounds like ich
Yeah.
verstehe nicht, like ugh, it's tricky.
It's so far. Yeah, it's so far off. I mean, especially the language. I mean, I don't speak Greek, for instance. I don't speak Egyptian Arabic. I am right now just studying my first um, language outside of the wonderful European spectrum, and I will get to another one. So I'm studying Chinese now, which is a whole lot of fun. And then I'm planning on. My dad is Nigerian, so from Nigeria, but he obviously came over to the U.S. They speak Yoruba. Obviously, they speak English as well, but they also speak Yoruba. And so the idea would be for me to do that. But I remember my German journey also, and this is back in the day because this is going to lead to my next question. This is back in the day when, like you said, remember high school where they don't actually teach you anything, but you have to go there for like you spend so many hours in a high school language learning class. When you think about it, the fact that no one comes out of there speaking the language, no one is even conversationally fluent, and it's like it's years. I don't know how many hours it is. It's like 1 hour what, 3, 4 times a week for 3 years, maybe four, sometimes 5, 6. uh, like the amount of wasted time. If the only thing you come out of there is ich heiße Will, that's it. That's pretty much it. Me llamo Will. That's all people. You go talk to them like, you took Spanish. Like I speak Spanish, and they're like, yeah, like okay. And you ask them, no, they can't. And so uh, when I started German, this is back in the day. This is after I did have some success. Spanish came when I was a kid, so when I was quite young, because my mom thought it would be a very good idea for me to. She was not bilingual, but she thought this is a obvious benefit for a kid. So she had me in classes, coming home and watching comprehensible input and all this stuff. So I could I could pretty much speak Spanish by the time I was 12, 13, like that. I was okay and confident. Um, and but when I started to have a go at German, it was the grammar is backwards for us English speakers, and you got to move this, and if it's not, there are two verbs, you got to put that one at the end, and trying to learn these grammar rules is a disaster. So I made the mistake of course trying to understand the grammar first. So I'm curious now that you have been successful learning languages. What, if anything, could we call the Joe Franco method? How do you start learning a language as fast as you can, because you're actually doing that right now? What exactly do you do?
So I always joke that I love learning, but I'm a bad student. And it's exactly what you just said. If you focus so much on the nitty gritty on the grammar, you might, at least for me, how I learn, I will trip and fall over and over again. It's almost like, so I was looking at my GPA from college and I noticed how I just naturally gravitated towards certain subjects. And I think as a learner, everyone needs to take this inventory of themselves, how their brain naturally works. For me, what I've noticed is I gravitate towards things that are more creative, that are more story based, that are more with context. Where I suck in life is math. It's these like very rigid things that seemingly have one way to do it. I'm not good with that. And that's grammar in many ways. It's like, damn, this is essentially a math equation that you have to put in to the context of words. So the way that I learn is like with Greek, the grammar is similar to German. And it's funny because when I was first learning Greek, the teacher was using German as an example, and I had heard of this German grammar before, so I knew what she was talking about. Like there's a neuter, gender in Greek. So there are three ways to
Mm,
call something: a man, a woman, or neutral, or masculine, feminine, or neutral. And it's like
right.
the different modes in Greek and the different declensions and whatever. And I'm like, literally, that's gibberish to me. But what I do know is that if I'm learning something with audio and not thinking about the grammar, that's how I'm going to learn how to speak. And so to answer your question, how do I learn very quickly? It's through a lot of things that abandon the traditional way that you learn in school. I don't look at grammar. I literally try to avoid it. And in some cases, like writing, I've started this new method of journaling because I have a whole company called Joe Club that's a journal membership club where it's like a book club, but we journal. And a lot of people kept asking, like, Joe, why don't you host journal sessions in different languages? And I'm like, that's dope. Because when you're journaling, you're writing about things that matter to you, right? So you're adding context. You're not writing a paragraph about shit you don't care about the way that they make you do in school. So I proposed for everyone in the club, like, okay, guys, let's journal in French. It'll be like a franglais journaling session. So the questions are in French, everyone writes in French, and then the discussion is in French. And then I did it in Portuguese and I did it in Spanish. And so now I'm journaling in Greek. And so when I did the 21-day language challenge that I created from scratch, I wanted to see how much would I learn if every single day for 21 days I wrote in a journal in Greek answering very easy questions. And by the end of the challenge, I wasn't even using the internet anymore because I had used so many repetitions of expressions that I would actually use in my life that I was like, damn,
Mhm.
this is the method. Like this is it for me. It's contextualizing the language. It's not learning the apple is green. I feel like so many people
Yes.
fail with these like gamified
Yeah.
apps, And every language learner knows you're not gonna learn that language from these apps that look like candy. You're just not going to. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's funny, right? Because you never necessarily want to push anyone away from learning a language or getting exposure to a language and doing that stuff. I mean, obviously, like in our company, we've had all these, and just like I'm sure, just like you know, once you achieve a certain level, and we have a bunch of YouTube channels, and once you achieve a certain level, the companies come to you, right? So we've basically talked to a whole host of these companies, and you know, even Duolingo included, and I wonder what they would say. And I had this discussion with Nate. I forget Nate's entire thing. Nate's Spanish speaking, or sorry, he learns Mexican Spanish, and Duolingo wouldn't claim right to make you fluent in a language. That's not what they claim. Do they claim that? I'm asking.
I'm not sure. I don't think they do. And I think most language softwares that I've been in contact with, because I tell
Hmm.
them, I'm like, let's be very clear. There's not going to be this exclusivity because the nature of learning languages is that it's not just one source of input. And they all understand. And they're like, yeah, we use like Pimsleur.
Okay,
Pimsleur, for instance, I love working with them because it's an app I actually use and I love it for
sure.
several reasons, but I told them, I was like, "Hey guys, the reality is I'm not gonna just learn this, languages. I'm not gonna learn just with Pimsleur. I need to have a teacher and I need to have like some written materials." And they're like, "Yeah, totally. We see our app as supplementary. We know that it's not just one app."
Okay,
And this is why they're great
right.
partners. So as far as like the Duolingos of the world, I'm not sure how they feel, but I'm sure that
Uh huh.
any polyglot or linguist or language lover would tell you, like, they need multiple sources of input to learn.
Totally. And so to touch on the point that you realize by journaling. So for me, I write a lot of my notes. So I'm actually this is it's really interesting. And sorry, this is a small tangent, but you know, we have a soccer channel, and so over there, I don't really talk much about my life at all, right? And so languages are more intricately related to you as a person and how you express yourself. So I'm into lucid dreaming, you know, right? And I keep a dream journal, and so obviously it's a good opportunity, just like you, to write in other languages. And what I found, I tend to have favorite languages for certain things. Um, that's in writing notes. So my dream journal is mostly, if not 75% in Italian. I can't tell you why that is. It just feels
Davvero?
like that's what it's supposed it's just supposed to be in Italian. I have a weird relationship with Italy just in general, having not spent more than just a few days there anyway. But yeah, so what I wanted to touch on though is that the fact that you journal and it's you, these are your expressions and your thoughts. That is what creates that imprint on your mind. And something that I've started doing that I started doing maybe a little over a year ago. Whenever I do take a lesson, because there for me, I break my learning down to um, input, bunch of exposure to the language, simple stuff, and you know, I enjoy speaking from the beginning. I'm people all over the internet would probably claim me to be a massive extrovert, but I'm not. I just want to read my books and meditate, and I want you to leave me alone.
Me
That's normally,
too.
but I have this, yeah,
We're fake
right,
extroverts.
yeah. Oh, okay. So are you too?
I am too. I mean, I've journaled my whole life. I've always been in books. Like, I grew up undocumented and hiding. I'm not the person. Like, what
Yeah,
what people
yeah,
see has been a learned behavior, and it's mainly because I lived in New York City,
yeah.
and that's it.
So yeah, so like I have an ability to convey things, you know, and out. But what I started doing was whenever I do have a lesson in a language, I'll record it. And then after I record that, let's say 30-minute lesson, I'll go back and listen because what you have there is now comprehensible input and you trying to express an expression. The likelihood of you remembering the way that you try to describe your day is so much better than you just seeing something on one of these, like you said, gamified apps that says the elephant climbed the tree to get to the apple. And it's like, great, but I haven't said the word elephant in, you know, in German in like whatever, forever. So I found that that is definitely one of the most important things. If you can actually make that connection with the language when you're early on, you know, then you'll notice that you remember more, and it doesn't have anything to do with you having a bad memory, like some people think. I can't learn languages and all this other stuff. So
Right.
I definitely find that interesting. But why don't you tell us what people find though in this? How do you sign up? Like, how do I sign up for this
The 21 day
21-day
language challenge?
challenge? Or
So it's funny
yeah,
because
what do people get?
I wanted to do it for myself, right? Like, because I was learning wow, I literally forget what languages I was learning. I was learning Greek, and I started journaling every day. And I'm like, "Damn, I really wanna do this." This is how my journaling club happened. So, back in the pandemic, I posted a picture of my journal in English, and people were like, "Oh my god, this is so dope, like, we wanna journal with you for 30 days." So I created a 30-day journal challenge, and then it turned into a 60-day journal challenge, 90-day challenge, and then it became a
Mm,
membership program. Then I'm like, "Damn, what if
mm,
I did this journal challenge, but in a different language, and I put it on my Instagram?" And so I created like a newsletter sign up. People signed up. It was free. And every single day I would send an email with a prompt, a basic prompt, and a challenge. And the challenges ranged from like find a recipe to cook in that language to like find a new podcast and listen to an episode and write down 5 expressions. So it was almost like I sent people on a scavenger hunt every single day, and the writing component was also a huge piece of it. And that challenge just lived on my Instagram. So people can go on my Instagram now at Joe_Franco and scroll back, and you'll see like every day I posted the challenge. And my kind of accountability piece was I was posting what I actually wrote in Greek. And that was dope. And so there's a hashtag 21 day language challenge. You can find other people around the world doing any language, really. The only other language that doesn't work is sign language because it's very
mm,
verbal heavy. But now I'm working on revamping the challenge based on what I've learned. So to make kind of like a premium version where it'll be an always on 21-day language challenge, kind of like a drip situation where you can sign up, you get daily emails for 21 days, and you can revisit it. So that's the next project that I'm building. I'm also, so to find out more about that, you could just follow me on Instagram and sign up for my newsletter, which is in my bio link. And then I'm building a course to kind of outline this strategy, this method, because the way that I learn language is truly unorthodox. I'm sure you have a method too that's like, what is your method? How do you outline your method?
okay. Uh, yeah. So I do have a very eccentric, I guess you could say, language learning method. And like I said, it comes from failing, which I think the best methods come from failing a whole bunch and figuring out what doesn't work. And like, and clearly everybody is not exactly the same, but there are some commonalities between the people that you see with success. What I've found in the method that I basically, let's just pretend that I wanted to learn. Okay, so that's a bad example. I was going to say Portuguese, but given my Spanish and French and all these other, that one, I don't know how I would tackle that. I should ask you about Brazilian Portuguese, by the way. But let's say I wanted to learn something completely different. That's not Chinese with different characters. Give me a language here. Polish. Let's go with Polish. All right. So I have a decent base in Slavic languages with Russian and Croatian. But how would I actually do this? The very first thing that I have to find is some sort of super basic thing, whether it's an audio. I prefer video just to have those visual cues, some sort of simple, if it's 10, 20, 15 minutes, a comprehensible input where I understand 80 to 90%, something like this. I'm talking day one. Like, I just decided today I'm going to learn Polish. I got to go find this thing. So that's the very first thing that I do. I find that and I listen to that and I understand it, and I don't expect to do or say anything at all on that first day. This is literally breaking down the first day. I'll come back the next day and I'll watch that again. In the meantime, what I'll try and do is find expressions and things that I can actually say to people. Where's the bathroom? What are you doing? What's up? And I will personally get myself into all sorts of trouble on the street asking people these things and getting things back and seeing if I can do it. And obviously, you don't have the vocab, but I do it anyway, right? And so it's a combination I have of starting with the comprehensible input, finding expressions that I think I would actually use and need immediately, and then putting myself out a little bit further than I'm supposed to be. I have no business asking a Polish person, "Hey, how's your day been?" Because they're going to start talking to me about their day, and I'm not going to be able to understand. But I might catch a few things with context and stuff like that. So that looks like my first few days. At the end of the week, by then I've got something to read. that has that same level of comprehensible input, 75, 85%. And I read that same text and that same stuff for the first 2 weeks. I do that. After that 21, 1 month, maybe 2 months, something like that, I might then have my first lesson. I usually won't do my first lesson proper until I feel like, I'm thinking about some things. And you know that feeling when you're learning a language, when you react to something in a language, you either curse or you say something. When that happens, that's a good time to know, I've made some sort of switch in my head. And it's around that time that I usually look to have my lessons. And then from then on, obviously, it gets more complicated. But if I had to break it down for anybody as much as I could, it's that. I mean, there are a few other key points, but that's my method,
Got it.
more or
So it's like
less.
you just jump into the deep end as far as like input goes and getting out there and talking to so many people. I love watching you just go up to strangers. It's ballsy. It's bold. Like that is
Yeah,
some bold stuff. But
I enjoy it.
I respect it so much because when you a lot of people don't really talk about this much, but like we learn languages not to just say that we speak them, but to actually speak them with people, with humans, right? Like to me, that's the superpower. It's like you're unlocking these cultures that, especially being a person of color, because whether we talk about that or not, how many people are shocked that we're both black people showing up to these
Right.
countries. Like I'm in Greece, I'm the only black woman around, and I'm like,
Yeah.
like, mata linika. It's just wild to them.
Yeah.
And it's almost like with being a linguist, polyglot, multilingual, and being a person of color, we get to show up and, in my optimistic sense of this kind of experience on earth, we get to lower the racism because we're shocking people in a positive way of showing
Totally.
respect for taking the time to learn their language, which is something that they do not expect foreigners to do, especially when you're talking about a country as small as Croatia, like Hrvatska. I love Hrvatska so
Hrvatska.
much. And that's
Yeah.
another language that I'm like, oh, I'm coming for Croatian because the people are lovely already. But the minute you start saying like, Hvala, whatever, they just
Oh, yes.
change. They change.
Oh, yeah.
And I
Totally.
think as a person of color, as all the things that I carry with me, it's almost like a duty to show up and try my best to be the best representative and show the humanity in all of us so that maybe me showing up will change people's minds about preconceived notions of like people of color. Maybe that's too much to ask. What do you think?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, it's one of the funniest things, and I had this discussion once again with Nate. I told him the story that happened to me when I was in Ukraine for the first time. I had played in Croatia and Serbia already, but I was kind of learning Russian for the most part. The place where I was mainly Russian speaking, and I was walking back from training one day, and there were a bunch of guys, construction guys. They were working on a house, and this guy, I was walking with my friends, came down off of the building and came to just like shake my hand. And I'm like, "Hi, I don't know what you're saying. I don't know where you're going." And my friend said, "Yeah, what he's saying is he's never met a black person before. He thought it would be cool because it was a small town. It's a big club, but they're in a small town. He said he never met a black person. He just thought it would be cool to come and say hi to you." And I'm thinking, how amazing would it have been to blow this guy's mind had I spoken Russian? Had I been able to have a conversation with him already? He would have just been like the ambassador for, I love black people. I love this.
Exactly.
But no, I don't think I don't think it's too much. I think it's funny, especially when we start speaking about these Eastern European languages, uh, where it's not as common at all to see, one, black people on a day to day basis, and two, to see them actually speaking, that they're not tourists or that they have any interest in the culture at all. And I think that's been one of the things. And just as a final thing, I just did an interview. So I'm playing, like I said, I'm playing in Zagreb, Croatia. I just did an interview at the end of the season where I explained that I love Croatia and Serbia and all these things. And I have a complete life. It's home for me. It's another home for me for sure. But the guy asked me, "Have you had any bad experiences?" And I had to explain to him that the most racist experiences that I had were in Croatia and in Serbia. And I said, "Not because of the people." I said it was because of the certain people. And obviously when you were talking about sports, it's a different thing. You have you have people already amped up and ready to talk about things. But it wasn't because of the people. It was because of the cultural fact that in America, it would be nearly impossible for you to say anything racist in public without having a huge issue from a bunch of different races. It really wouldn't matter who's there; you're going to be in trouble. Over there, they're kind of like not. They're not expecting it, and they don't really know how to. It's not to say that they tolerate it by any means, but some of the guys don't have any of that fear. I think if you live in the US and you are, let's say, you hold some sort of racist or idiotic, ignorant belief, you realize that you have to kind of keep that to yourself.
Mhm.
You can't really be too bold and out there with it. So it was fascinating. He didn't print any of that, by the way. He decided that he was just going to talk about soccer. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
but I mean, like, I guess the bottom line is yes, racism is real, and like, this is not the topic of the podcast episode, but I think language is a really great way to build bridges with any kind of prejudice and stereotypes that people might have in their heads. Like when I went to Egypt for the first time, and this is like my dear friend's family, we were in Alexandria, then we went to this beach town, Marsa Matruh, which is very local, like no, there are tourists, but we were in the local parts. And her family kept saying like, Juju, wow, you're a black woman. We were expecting you to be big and fat and ugly, and you're so beautiful and you're so
oh my
smart.
God.
Because I was learning
Oh
Arabic with
my
them, and I'm like, thank you? Question mark. And
God.
it's just those moments, and they kept expressing the shock the entire time I was
Right.
there. And towards the end, they were even more shocked because I was picking up Arabic like in record speeds that they would not expect. Because not only did I care and that shocked them, but I was actually getting it, and I was using my French to ask my my best
Mm,
friend's nephew, or my best friend's cousin, who was like 10 at the time. He spoke French, and I was asking him to
mm.
teach me Arabic by using French. So it was like triple degree of shock for
Love it.
everyone.
Yeah.
And yeah, and when I left, that was the first time that I was like, that was definitely racism, but in a weird twist of kind of like a positive outcome, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, the world is an interesting place, and it's funny because I don't focus on that at all. I don't have any time to focus on whether you like me because of my skin or because I'm from the US or because whatever. I don't care. I myself feel like a global citizen, so it's really hard for me to care about that. I don't care. I have such a massive curiosity in everyone that I find it very easy to have conversations, and that's one of the things when people say, "Oh, I do this job." It might be for them they don't have any confidence. They don't feel like it's such a special job. But for me, I don't have the experience of working whatever in a skyscraper, trying to work in the engine room. Like they're like, "Oh, it's not a glorious." I don't know what that's like. Explain to me. Tell me. Give me another life experience that I'm not going to have. And so that for me is more interesting and what drives me to do this. But I guess we'll close it out here. We're definitely gonna have to have you back on. We'll definitely make one of those videos because we have enough languages in common. So we'll have to do that sometime. Where we speak Italian, French, Spanish, German. After your German, after you
Oh
come
my
back
god.
from
And
your German trip
Croatian.
and
You know what?
Croatian, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
I'll
I would
see you in
love to.
Zagreb.
That would. Yeah. To be honest, if we do a video in Croatian, I think it would blow the Croatian or the Balkan internet up.
I would
Just
love
these two
nothing
people.
more. I love, love, love
Yeah,
Croatia.
totally. Totally. Okay. Well, guys, we'll link. Obviously, there is no audio podcast to this. You are watching this on YouTube, so everything is in the description box. And Joe, thanks for being here. This was awesome.
Thanks, Will. Can't wait to talk to you on my podcast.
For sure. For sure. Anytime. All right, guys. We'll see you.